Hey there, this is Doug Smith. I am broker owner DHS Realty, and I'm doing a Wednesday training on basically the last 32 years of what's happened in real estate and the interest rates. Going back to 1989, November, when I took my first real estate class at North Lake Community College in Irving. Took it with my mom and started a passion by having an instructor there named Bill Proctor that really put a fire in my heart to be in residential sales of real estate, where there's no ceiling, there's no floor, and you get in it what you get out of it what you put into it. So starting in 1994, that's the year I got my license in December. A year before, I bought my first property, which was a $39,900 condo in Farmers Branch, and at the time rates were around 9%. And I got something called an FHA ARM, an adjustable rate mortgage. So the interest rate started at about 5%. Every year it could go up or down 1 point, and it was capped at 5 points in the life of the loan. And worst case, it would take 5 years to get there, because it started at 5% or 6%. I forget what the actual interest rate was, but it could go up or down 1 point, but only 1 point in 1 year. And it was capped at 5 points. So worst case, in 1 year, it could go from in 5 years, it could go from 5 to 10. And it could also go down, which is what actually happened. At one point, my mortgage payment was, I think, $220. And my HOA in that condo complex was more. Now, that complex was called an FHA approved complex, which is super important when you're working with a buyer, because if the complex is FHA approved, even if the buyer is going conventional, which means they're putting 5, 10, 15, 20% more or down, 20% down or more, for resale purposes, when they go to sell it, the buyer on the resale can get in for as little as 3.5%. So that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about in this training, is that when you work with a buyer looking at condos, it's probably a good idea to point them in the direction of buying a condo that's FHA approved, even if they're not going FHA, because that means that on resale, they're opening up their market for that condo to a whole group of buyers that could buy it for 3.5% down. So that's always going to be really important. So I lived in that property for a couple years, and then I rented it out. And I had Syntex Homes, a smaller version of Syntex called North Haven Homes, bought a $100,000 property in Carrollton and went conventional 5% down. So my first property, I bought FHA, lived in it for a couple years, rented it out. And then the second property that I had, North Haven Homes, which is like a first-time home builder build in Carrollton, I went conventional and put 5% down. So I owed about $95,000, put 5% down. It was a $100,000 property, and I lived in it for 2 years and had paid down some principal down to about $88,000. And in 2 years, I thought the home was worth about $118,000. So because it was a conventional product, I called my lender and requested a packet on waiving my mortgage insurance. An appraiser met me at the house, had a Cowboy sweatshirt on. We talked about the Cowboys and their Super Bowl run, because this was 1994. They had just won the Super Bowl. And we never even looked at the house. After a couple hours of talking, he had to go for another appointment. And he basically looked at me and he goes, "Hey, what do you need?" And I go, "118,000 as a value." And he goes, "I got you, brother." And the next month, on the 1st, my mortgage payment dropped $225, because that was mortgage insurance, commonly referred to as PMI, private mortgage insurance. And I had my payment reduced by almost $225, simply because the value that day, less what I owed, was a 20% equity position. And that's the benefit of buying conventional product when you have a buyer you're working with. Just remember that the day that your buyer shows you an FHA pre-approval letter, you should be getting in touch with that lender to find out the reason why the buyer needs to go FHA. And generally, it boils down to either they have a high debt ratio or they have a low credit score. So anyways, I lived in that house for a couple years and I rented it out. So now I had a house that was $39,000, a condo that I had a renter in, lived in it for 2 years, FHA. Bought a second house, conventional, 5% down, lived in it 2 years, rented it out. And then we bought, my ex-wife and I, we bought our third property in Carrollton, and we put 10% down, and that was called a 80-10-10, commonly referred to back then, it was right around 1996, as a piggyback loan. And what I did is, by buying that property with 10% down, so let's just say the home was about $350,000, I put 10% down, so I put about $33,000 down. I got another loan for $33,000, and then I got a primary loan for about $280,000. And the lender looked at me, even though I only put 10% down, the fact that I got a second lien of 10%, they looked at me like I put 20% down and I paid no private mortgage insurance. So I had what was called an 80-10-10, an 80% loan, a 10% loan, and then I put 10% of my own money down. And the second lien, that 10% lien, was deductible with the interest I paid on it. And it was a way of me getting out from under paying mortgage insurance on the other 10% for the private mortgage insurance, because it was a conventional loan. So we lived in that property for about 4 years. And then we decided to move into Plano. And when we bought in Plano in 2000, we sold that third house, but still had the first 2 houses as rentals. And when we sold the third house, the day I put the sign in the yard, a guy drove up and bought it, and we leased it back for up to 90 days. I think it was 88 days. We leased that house back while our home was being built in Plano. And on that house, with the proceeds from the third house, we put 20% down. So we had no mortgage insurance, because private mortgage insurance insures the top 20% of the loan against default. And by putting 20% down on that fourth property, we insured that top 20 with our own money. So we had no mortgage insurance. We lived there for about 7 years. And then my ex-wife and I got divorced. And we got divorced right in the year 2007. So just to give you an idea what was happening in 2007, that was called the subprime meltdown. Lenders were literally making it easier to buy a home than to get a credit card. And basically the test to get a loan back in 2006 and 2007 was really 3 questions. A lender would ask you if you had income, and you'd say, I have no income. And they'd ask you if you had a job or assets, and you'd say, no, I have no job or no assets. So that was no income, no job, assets. And that was called a ninja loan. And the third question was basically, do you have a heartbeat? And if you did, you got a loan. And that's basically what happened when I bought my house in 2007 that I'm currently in right now. They didn't check my income. I basically got in on an interest-only loan, which means that I put 0 down, no risk. I had the seller pay all my closing costs, and I had an interest-only loan, which means every time I made a payment, nothing went to principal. And I got into that home in 2007, and about 9 months later, I refinanced into a 30-year mortgage. But if you look at when I bought that home in 2007, my purchase was a microcosm of a bigger problem nationwide, where lenders were deregulated, and they were able to basically get people into houses without any regulation. And people were getting houses that basically shouldn't have been, that weren't responsible. And I actually had some investors that bought almost 27 homes in a subdivision in Frisco in 2007 that closed around the end or beginning of 2007 and the beginning of 2008, that all 27 homes were second, third, and fourth investor properties. And the builder, Meritage, let them all move in for 0 down, and the builder paid all their closing costs. The last one closed in early 2008, and then you know what hit the fan, and we had the Great Recession. And that whole subdivision basically went into either foreclosure or a bunch of renters are in there. So Again, just recapping kind of what happened from when I got licensed all the way up to about 2007. In 94, we had rates about 8%. A lot of people were doing ARMs. From 94 to 97, we had a basic appreciation of about 2 or 3%. From 97 to 2001, we had double-digit appreciation. It was a great market, 97 to 2001. In 2001, two things happened that affected the economy. We had the NASDAQ bubble burst in early 2008, early 2002. And in September of 2001, we had planes flying into buildings, and it, destroyed our economy, coupled with the NASDAQ bubble burst. The DFW area has always been pretty much an anomaly. We haven't really been hit as hard as the nation. And so from 97 to 2001, we had a great market. We had a little bit of a hiccup in 2001 and early 2002. And then right around 2003, really all the way up to, about 2007, 2010, we had some pretty good growth. And then, of course, we had the subprime meltdown in 2007. And then going into that subprime meltdown in 2007, it was easy to get a loan, easier than to get a credit card. Coming out of the Great Recession, people were having to put 20 and 25% down just to get into a home. And over time, we have eased up that regulation, and we're back to, basically getting homes fairly easy. In between the Great Recession and today, we've had hanging election chads. We've had Trump Biden and Trump and Hillary. And then, of course, we had COVID. And so it kind of brings us up to today. And today rates are hovering around 3.5. There's been some forecasting that rates could go up to 4% next year. And one of the things that's crazy about this year is that due to COVID, the last 2 years, we had something called forbearance, which basically was a suspension of you making your mortgage payments. And that has just been released to where now that's going to go back into effect, where people do need to make their payments. And there's been a lot of talk by economists that that's going to cause some foreclosures. And, not everybody knows the future, or no one does. So I'm not going to predict it, but I have my own opinion. And obviously it's good for everybody to do their own research. But this year we've had an incredible supply and demand crisis where nationwide homes have appreciated crazily. And more importantly, in the DFW area, so far this year, homes have appreciated over 25%. So I personally don't see we're going to get this influx of foreclosures that a lot of people are talking about, because why would a lender foreclose on you when you have such appreciation in a home where you could sell it and get a gain? So there could be some negotiations on that forbearance when it comes back, and lenders might be a little more forgiving, even though forgiveness and forbearance are not the same thing. Forbearance is where you still have to pay it. Forgiveness is when you don't. I think there could be some negotiations between specific lenders and buyers in the marketplace. And I just wanted everybody to kind of get an idea on what has happened in the marketplace from 1994 all the way up to today, the 32 years from 1989 when I started taking classes to today, and know that, hey, when the market goes up and down, which it will always, agents in my office need to learn how to do leases. We're going to train on foreclosures, on short sales, on HUD homes. And we're going to be fishermen. We're going to go out on a boat and we're going to throw multiple lines off the boat, not just one. And my job as a broker is to advocate for my agents and to build them up, to make them have the wherewithal that when we have times of distress in the real estate industry, that people still need homes. So they can learn how to go to apartments. And when they go to apartments, they need to sign in their realtor. When they go to new home builders, they need to sign in their realtor. And that's either on the phone with COVID. Sometimes that's the first time that you interact with a builder or an apartment complex, or in person. And they absolutely have to be signed in. And then I train them up and I'm available 5 a.m. to midnight. I feel like I'm a great resource. We'd love to have you. But remember, the theme of today is even when you lose, you win. So how can you hurt me now? Y'all go get some. Y'all have a great day. And remember, I'm up till midnight, so give me a ring if you have any questions.